Good evening. Welcome to Siddha Vetha webinar series. Today we have an interesting speaker. It's Mr. Rajesh Kothandaraman, a Sanmarki. Sanmarkis are strict followers of Vallalar. He received his PhD in BE from the University of Madras in Chennai, and a degree in a master's degree by research. It's called a degree MSc by research in electrical engineering from the Indian IIT Chennai. Currently he works in the semiconductor and wireless industry of Silicon Valley. His previous research experience includes radar, digital signal processing, wireless communications for cellular and Wi-Fi, and multimedia. However, he was always passionate about ancient science and consciousness and how language is linked with ancient science. So today's he's volunteered for in the Tamil Academy in the California area for past 5 years. His research papers are published widely in many international journals, including top journals like IEEE. So today you will be talking about the natural language for awakening consciousness, and how a language, by learning a language, how consciousness can be awakened. So very scientific documentation and research. You can go ahead, Dr. Rajesh Kothandaraman, please.
Thank you, Dr. Shan. Good evening, everyone. Let me start sharing this screen.
Good evening.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yeah. You can do full screen, please.
Yeah. Okay. So let's start with the simple thing. Language and the awakening consciousness. So we all know the main thing which awakens us in sleep is the sound. Sound is a very important awakening faculty. In fact, light and sound are the fundamental faculties for awakening. So language is the next level, composed of words. It awakens a human being from ignorance to knowledge. People usually say this, these thoughts translate into words and then words into action. So that captures the process of the ignorance to knowledge awakening. But that holds for any language. What is a natural language? Natural language is something that is built on the principles of truth and consciousness. So if you have a language like that, its grammar also should be consistent with the principles of truth and consciousness. So in this talk, we'll do a case study of the Tamil language, which is built on the principles of truth and consciousness. So what is truth and consciousness? We'll define it shortly. Before that, I wanted to tell why we chose Tamil as a case study. Because there are two root languages in India. Sanskrit and Tamil, the former being the root of northern languages and the Tamil being the root of southern languages. Tamil, many people, if people do not know, has a history of around 2000 years, more than that, and with a very wide literature and a script also which is more than 2000 years old. It is widely spoken. It's the official language in India, Sri Lanka, and Singapore. It's also widely spoken in Malaysia. Instead of me telling the greatness of Tamil, I would quote Sri Aurobindo, the yogic mystic philosopher, the great philosopher, what he said in The Secret of the Veda, in his book about Tamil. Because Sri Aurobindo is a great exponent in Sanskrit. He's also very well versed in Greek, Latin, and other languages, French, and so on. And he, in fact, came up with the first widely recognized psychological interpretation of the Vedas, and did a lot of work on Upanishads also. So, in The Secret of the Veda book, since he settled in Pondicherry, which is part of Tamil Nadu, near Tamil Nadu, on his first encounter with the Tamil language, he says, on examining the vocables of the Tamil language, in appearance so foreign to the Sanskrit form and character, I found myself continually guided by words, by families of words, supposed to be pure Tamil, in establishing new relations between Sanskrit and its distant sister Latin, and occasionally between Greek and the Sanskrit. Sometimes the Tamil vocable not only suggested the connection, but proved the missing link in a family of connected words. And it was through this Dravidian language I came first to perceive what seems to me now the true law, origins, and as it were, the embryology of Aryan tongues. He further says that his first study of the Tamil words had brought me, he says, had brought me to what seemed to clue of very origins in the structure of ancient Sanskrit tongue. So far did this clue lead that I lost sight entirely of my original subject of interest, the connections between Aryan and Dravidian speech, and plunged into the far more interesting research of origins and laws and development of human language itself. So much for the Tamil language. The important thing about Tamil is it is very simple, and yet it exposes the principles of truth and consciousness in a very elegant way. So that is the beauty of Tamil language. So we will see how it is, how it does in the next slides. So before jumping into that, we'll go through some definitions, because we told about truth, consciousness before, principles of truth and consciousness. What is truth, what is consciousness, and what is bliss? Because this definition is very important. Because the divine, the one divine, the supreme divine, is defined. If one wants to give a definition, can be defined as truth, consciousness, bliss. Truth is, it's an existence. It's called Sat in Sanskrit, Sigaram in Tamil. And the meaning of that is that expresses as containing everything. Consciousness is that exists as expressing everything. And delight is the bliss filled by both. If you want, I just what I've shown here is a toy example. These images. These are quite familiar images about illusion. Many people still have difficulty in perceiving the two different type of images in this. For example, the first one shows a young girl and an old lady. The second one shows a jar and as well as two human faces. This is more easy to visualize. This one, sometimes people have a little difficulty. But if you see, this is the nose and this is the mouth of the old lady, and this is the hair. One can easily visualize. And the important thing here is, if you ask what is the truth of this image, whether it is a young girl or an old lady, there'll be two set of people, and then they will be arguing for the whatever they perceive. But what is truth? The truth here is, this image contains both the young girl and the old lady. That is what is truth. So it contains both, and that is what is truth as far as this image is concerned. And what is consciousness here? The expression that it expressing itself as the girl, young girl, and the old lady. When you realize that, when you become aware of that, that is what is consciousness. And what is delight here? The delight is the simple feeling when you understand this, that both truth and this consciousness, when you become aware of that, and then you also realize that both exist, you get a satisfaction in that. That can be thought of as a delight. This is a toy example. The same applies for this image also. So with this definition in mind, we can go ahead with the next set of slides. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. So coming back to Tamil, there's a metaphysical framework behind the Tamil language. The Tamil language has 12 vowels and 18 consonants, and they are called as Uir and Mei, which means basically Uir is consciousness, or you can think of it as soul, and Mei is truth or the body. So when the soul activates the body, you get the life. And these two, the vowels and consonants, join together to form the vowel consonants. It's called the Uir Mei Ezhuthu. So this framework is the key behind the Tamil language. This metaphysics originate from this particular framework. So where do we get more information about this? So around 1850s, the then Sankaracharya from Kanchipuram, he visited Chennai to one of the temples, and then he was inspecting some of the old Vedic texts, and he had a question about the verse Ekam Sat Praha Bahuta Vadanti in the Vedas. So he wanted a deeper explanation of that. So he was looking for a person who can explain that. So his assistant suggested Valalar, who was around that place, and said that he can explain these things in great detail. So both met, and Valalar gave a detailed explanation of the verse, and apparently Sankaracharya was very happy about the explanation and the sophistication of the Sanskrit language. So he asserted that Sanskrit is the mother of all languages. Valalar, on hearing that, did not refute that, but responded by writing a metaphysical interpretation of the word Tamil. This is a very important document, because he derives the meaning of the word Tamil through a principle of self-referential principle of word compositionality. That is, the meaning of that is basically like you take the word Tamil and split the vowel consonants ta, mi, and il, and then give the individual meaning of each of these vowel consonants, and then compose the final meaning. And this is what is called as what I call it as self-referential principle of word compositionality. He explains that in quite a good detail. That essay is around a couple of pages, but it has enormous amount of information packed in that. So in that he summarizes finally saying that the meaning of Tamil is involution, evolution, and supreme perfection delight. To understand this in a little more detail, we'll go to the next slide. So what is this process of involution, evolution, and delight? So the framework is formed like this. These are the Tamil consonants, ka to ra. There are 15 consonants, and there are 3 special consonants, which I don't show here. But this is the natural order. This is a normal order, how it is written, from lowest to highest. And in this, the ancients, what they have done is, the ancient yogis, they have assigned different tattvas to each of the letters, to each of the consonants. And that holds the key to forming the composite word meaning. For example, this what we call as the truth, consciousness, bliss, the one divine. It descends from its lofty heights to become a human being or any living being as a manifestation. The way it does is, it has 2 hemispheres. One is the higher hemisphere and the lower hemisphere. And all these letters are mapped to these 2 hemispheres. The letters ka to na belong to lower hemisphere, and ya to ra to the higher hemisphere. And then the pa and ma are the mid, linking these 2 hemispheres. And the corresponding tattvas for these letters are the ya in this region is called supermind. In between is the overmind, and tha and na are the mind principles, and ta na are the vital life principles. Similarly, the physical senses and the physical body. So these are the tattvas, these are principles behind these letters. I just to show a small table of this, of these vowel and consonants, how they're mapped. A represents because that's the beginning letter, first and fundamental. So that's the truth and the being. E is the becoming or the consciousness. U is the delight of existence. Similarly, the remaining consonants, which I just explained. So anything above the mind is called overmind region. And above that is what is called a supramental region, because it's above all this mind principles. So interesting thing here is that the truth, consciousness, bliss descends through the supermind and the overmind. Overmind also called as cosmic consciousness here in this region, into the mind plane. And that's what is called as ta. And after that, it acquires life, the senses, and the physical body. So that is the entry point to the lower hemisphere. Ta is the entry point of the real manifestation of the human being. And then falls into a lowest level, because as you can see here, it's a descending grade of consciousness. It is super high conscient over here, as in this supramental overmind region, and then as it goes down, the consciousness becomes lower and lower, and it becomes a inert, inconscient, almost when it comes to physical matter. So that's why the body is the least conscious thing. And then slowly the consciousness increases once as one acquires emotion and one starts thinking, they are a slightly higher consciousness. But still, they all belong to the lower hemisphere. So we saw the principle of ta here, and then what happens is there's a next letter is me. The me is the magaram. This sound is the nasal sound. It's called Sangara Pranava. Sangara Pranava means it's basically dissolution sound. So what it does is the human being who's involved in this ignorance, right, starts evolving back to its source. Because what is involved here is really the divine grace itself. It came down to the lowest level of inconscient matter. Still, it is involved there. But if human being starts aspiring, it can start evolving. And that is what is happening over here. So if you apply this, the sound to ka, and if you join them, it becomes nya. Similarly, if you apply that to cha, it becomes nya. Similarly, ta, it becomes na, ta becomes na. So this is an interesting thing, because this in fact is a rule in the Tamil grammar, also in the Sanskrit grammar, anywhere. So when you join this and then next word starts with ka, it evolves to this sound. For example, it's like a word called perum plus karunai, it becomes perum karunai. Similarly, like cha, if you say perum plus jodi, it becomes perum jodi. So it becomes this letter followed by the jodi. So like that, the conjugation principles are formed, used to form new words. So this phenomenon is what this process is what we call it as evolution lower hemisphere, because you are in ignorance, and then we start evolving by dissolving all the impurities. What is the dissolving sound? Is ma. This sound. That's why the sound agara, ugara, magaram, which is basically the om sound, it takes you from the outermost consciousness to the innermost consciousness. That is the significance becomes the om sound, and that is what is the evolution in lower hemisphere. So once you reach this mid region, the overmind region, and this is where the one has become many, and this is where all the religions are formed. And one has to cross that, and then there's another level of evolution happens in the supramental domain, the supramental plane, and that is what is called as evolution in higher hemisphere. And once you climb all the way up to the final letter is what is il. This is as far as Tamil is concerned, this is the final letter, 15th, leaving the special consonants. So this represents the final perfection delight. After the two evolutions, you almost become perfectly pure, and then they experience the divine. And that experience is what is called as Tamil. So starting to the evolution into the ta, and then after start evolving, go through the ma, which becomes me, it becomes yi, tami, and then yid. So it involves two evolution in lower and higher hemisphere. So in a simple way, if you see it as a Venn diagram, you can see the spirit, and then involves in the mind, and it becomes body. The evolution is that process is called as involution. The reverse process of heightening the consciousness is going from the body to mind and then back to the spirit. That's called as evolution. So this is the significance of Tamil. So going to the next level. So given the principles of truth and consciousness for the language, the grammars also should reflect that, because each alphabet has its own meaning here, because it's associated with the tattva or the principle, and each has its own grammar. And what are those grammars? Truth, experience, and consciousness, and that's what we just now saw. There's an innate quality for each vowel and consonant. Of course, there's a sound grammar of how things are arranged, and there's a structural form grammar. When you write it as a script, there is again a grammar for that. And this is again further compounded by there are inner forms, nature, artificialness, generality, speciality, and quality grammars. In fact, this information are all quite new because this was given out by Valalar to one of his disciple when he was asking some questions. He just explains the significance of agaram, the first letter, and then he raises 45 grammar questions on that. All that could be summarized by these. I took it from there. So there are so many grammars associated with just one letter. So similarly for all the letters. So what I call it as a structural grammar, and that is the last form grammar, right? The structural form. When it comes to this, how are the Tamil letters? How do they exhibit this grammar? Here, if you see, this is the history of Tamil script evolution. It has evolved over 2000 years from the old Tamil Brahmi script. You can see that, this table shows, from 3rd century BC to the 19th century AD. And it has evolved pretty continuously. Valalar, he gave this explanation for agaram, this form of spiraling out from a point, bursting forth, spiraling into a bigger one, and then dividing space, and then rise and come down. This is the first letter, agaram's form. It has 9, almost 8 segments, and then the whole thing together is the ninth stage. He has associated 9 shaktis for each of these, the 9 parts is associated with the 9 shaktis. Like this Vamai, Jeshta, Raudri, Kali, Kalavikarani, Palavikarani, Palapravdamani, Sarvabhudatamani, and then Manonmani. So all this, Vama corresponds to, descending and involving. First the point, and then, bursting forth, curling, bursting forth. All are, each and everything is a Shakti behind it. This starts from a over-mind plane, and then finally, it takes the mental form and ends in the physical plane. So basically, this is like bursting forth from a higher plane to a mind plane, which divides the upper and higher and lower hemispheres, and then takes the life form, and then takes the existential standing form, and that's what is called Sarva Bhuta Damani, because it's finally it takes the physical form, and all this together becomes the Manonmani. So this is the explanation given for agaram. So similarly, the same principles could be extended for all the other letters and even for the consonants, and that is quite interesting. When you come to the consonants, if you see here, the same order which I shown before, I'm showing over here. If you see the ka to ka, cha, ta, ta, pa, and so on, how this, when you see all the letters in the lower hemisphere, you can see one thing common, which is, there's a knot over here. There's a knot. Basically it indicates how when one gets involved in the lower hemisphere, because of the ego and acquiring of the desires and other things, one becomes knotted, basically. And then the effect of this dissolution principle sound, the effect of that is to unknot these knots. And that's what happens over here. When you apply this sound to the ka, this knot gets slightly unknotted slowly and then becomes nya. Each has its own significance. I'm not getting to the full details of that. It is there in another paper, but I'm just covering the main principle. Similarly for cha, this knot gets unknotted over here and then becomes like this. And then ta, similarly like this, get unknotted and then becomes na. This ta is a slightly different one. It's not an exception. But again, it's a ma inverted kind of thing, because it's an involution. This sound gets inverted. This form gets inverted, and then this represents the spirit, mind, and body form together to form na. And there's a similar exception in the higher hemisphere for ra. If you see here, if you see the higher hemisphere letters, all of them are opened on the top. You can see that. Whereas here, all of them are closed on the top, except for this exceptions of ra and ta, because that they are life principles, they have their own exceptions. But otherwise, if you see these letters, all of them are open on the top, which basically, and that happens from pa onwards. So this represents opening on the top, represents, it's like opened up, and represents oneness. And whatever that is below is all closeness. It shows ignorance. And similarly, the sound e and wu are, they are quite similar to the e and wu. And then, the forms are also like the ya is a lower part of this, and then wa is something like wu, and then extended with the existential form. And finally, the supreme letter, the consummate letter, is, it's like ma, starting ma as the basis, and then end at that ogaram. Ogaram is the o is the sound vowel. It's like joining ma and then ending with o. There is a final destination of this evolution. This is how it is reflected in the structural grammar or the consonants. So we've seen about the structural grammar. Now let's move to the sound grammar. As we saw, it has to reflect in both sound and in the forms, right? So what we saw just now was sound form grammar, and now followed by the sound grammar. How is it reflecting in the sounds? Sounds, if you see, this is, for example, this is a MIT open courseware slide of the which shows the details of the vocal tract and different parts like the teeth. I'm not sure whether you're able to see it clearly, but the lips followed by the teeth, alveolar, and then there's a palate, and then the velar, and then this is the here where which basically the vocal tract vibrates, and then when air is input, this region is key over here, because this lips, this vocal tract lips, they vibrate and then form a kind of periodic pulses which get modulated through this region based on the teeth and the tongue's position, and then also there's a nasal cavity coupling here, and so comes out as different kind of sounds, different consonants, also the vowels. And if you see here, the sounds I'm showing the same order, which is written in Tamil language, is basically ka, nya, cha, nya, ta, na, pa, ma. If you want to see that, people who are not familiar with the Tamil language, we call this as hard consonants. Ka, sa, ta, ta, pa is hard consonants, and the soft consonants are nya, and nama. Right. So if you want to understand in terms of English, it's like I'm just cooking up some simple phrase like thick, stitch, fit, smith. All the ending letters correspond to the hard consonants. Ka, cha, ta, ta. Similarly, for soft consonants, measuring inch and length, it's like ing, inch, nd, and inth, and that's what corresponds to the soft consonants. So how is this in terms of how can we analyze this? And this is we can do it via signal processing. I've used my own voice and recorded for this ka, cha, ta, and ta. What you see is the spectra for these sounds. You can focus on this, just the red spectrum. This corresponds to the ka, this consonant ka. The peaks in the spectrum correspond to the resonances of the vocal tract. Each sound has its unique signature. Depending on the position of the tongue and the teeth, different sounds are formed like that, right? So based on that, the resonance, the resonant frequencies keep changing. And they're fairly constant across different realizations of the sound. they're pretty constant for a person. It will slightly vary from person to person, but for one person, it is you can get a mean value of these consonants, and they're called these peaks in the spectra are called Formant frequencies. And this is the red color corresponds to the ka, and what I show here is the black is a spectrum for ma. That's common for all the ma sounds, right? And then once you apply this ma onto this ka spectrum, not getting into the the theorems, how do we get the how to basically it has to, it becomes a convolution in the time domain, and then the spectral domain it becomes a multiplication. So you can see when I apply the ma sound spectrum, and then on the ka sound spectrum, they get multiplied and becomes the nya sound. And that is what I'm showing you over here in the blue color. And this red color is the true nya sounds spectrum. So you can see a close match up to the three peaks. Typically, the consonants, first three Formant frequencies are enough to model them. So you can see a good match up to three consonants. The same applies for cha, ta, and na also. So you can see here, moment I apply this M spectrum, basically the dissolution sounds spectrum on the ta sound, its spectrum changes into the na sound spectrum pretty closely. And that's what I'm showing it over here. It's basically a kind of multiplication of the two spectrums. And this is exactly what we saw so far. The dissolution sound, evolves the hard sound into a soft sound. And we can see that spectrally also. So further, more interesting thing is this letters ta, mi, and r, right? So I took this spectrum of ta, and then the ma spectrum, and then this is r spectrum. The interesting thing is the ta corresponds to a lower hemisphere, the ma is the mid, m is the mid sound, and then r is the highest in the grade. What we see interesting thing is the r sound exhibits a peak at around 1600 hertz, which is there in the ta sound, which is not there for other higher hemisphere sounds typically. What is the significance of this? The important thing is when you become this supramental being, which is denoted by this r, it establishes the higher hemisphere sound establishes a harmony with the lower hemisphere, even though it's a higher hemisphere and it's almost quite equal to the semivowels. These are called semivowels. That's what is interesting thing here. Till this point, these are all hard consonants. Kasatapa is hard, they are all hard consonants. And then once they're evolving, they become soft consonants. And finally, they become almost equal to, they are called semivowels in the linguistic science. They are consonants, but still they're tending towards vowelness. As you can see, the vowel is the highest in terms of consciousness. And from the lowest consciousness, it evolves into highest consciousness. And as a consummation, the ra has an interesting thing. It has a spectrum which correlates well with the sta, which means it becomes compassionate. It is like it does not delineate any of the lower hemisphere. It doesn't go away. It tries to evolve the lower hemisphere also into its inherent nature. How do we verify that? This ta sound, right? This ra sound. You see, we already see there's a good correlation with the ta. This is the same spectrum I put in a different plot over here. And this one is a retroflex sound. Retroflex sound means like ra, when you say ra, and then in the same position, the tongue, retroflexes, basically folds and then makes that sound. And in the same way, you can do also ra, like that when you say. So in that position, one can easily turn that ra into a whistle. The whistle is a very interesting phenomenon because the whistle corresponds to tone in terms of signal. When it becomes a tone, that is, you can see the spectrum. When it is ra is whistled like in a whistled ra, when you make a sound like that, its spectrum becomes like this. Suddenly it becomes singular. It peaks in a particular frequency. So what is the significance of that? The tone is the most interesting signal, because the entire communication world, or any of this image or the video, audio, all of them, if you see, they're all just combinations of different sinusoids, you can say. Image it's in 2 dimension, whereas the voice and the communication signal are all in 1 dimension. So that's the only difference. But otherwise, they're all just combinations of this tones, harmonically related tones. Their amplitude and phase could be different, but they're all just the tones. So tone is represented by in mathematics by a function called the delta function. That's a strange function because it has an infinite amplitude at the point of definition, and it is zeroed otherwise in the point where it's not defined. And if you integrate that from -infinity to +infinity, the function becomes one, unity. So the definition of that function itself, tells a lot of truth about this. That's a very strange function. It can be even called as the God function of signal processing, if you want. So overall, what you can see is this ta, mi, il. They took the whoever coined that this word meticulously chose, one hard consonant, one soft consonant, and then the final consummate consonant, final letter, and then formed this word Tamil. And this comprehends the entire, the philosophical thing behind it, and also all the scientific analysis of sounds, and also this form grammar. Okay, so so much for the theoretical part are associated with the simulations. How is it going to awaken this consciousness for us? All this has to be put into practice. That's where this 4 principles of compassionate discipline comes into place. Valalar calls this as Jivakaranya Olka. Olka means discipline. There are 4 disciplines. This is the makeup of human being. The outermost is the physical body. Once you get in to the next level inside, it becomes life and mind. And then further inside, it's the psychic, which is the jiva. And then it is innermost is the soul. So as you raise from the plane of consciousness, so one after the other, you keep going inner and inner to the innermost. And this, if you want, you can say like these are quite familiar things, maintaining the body, discipline in a disciplined way, and the life desires, the mind, controlling, removing all the bad thoughts, all that stuff could be, broadly said, in these 2 disciplines, will be covered in these 2 disciplines. What is new and interesting is, the jiva workam, the psychic discipline. When you reach this point, there is no difference between, male, female, or caste, creed, religion, nationality, and for all the beings are equal. And that's where that's how it has to be taken at this one reaches at this level of discipline, to this level of discipline. And further, the highermost is the soul discipline. At this point, whether it's an ant or an elephant, doesn't matter. Everything has to be seen as a embodiment of the one divine, every living being, and one has to become almost one with all the living beings. There is a famous verse by Valalar. It's called "Vadiya Payirle Kanda Bodallam Vadinen." That means basically he says he was feeling very sad on seeing the withering the paddy fields, even when they're not able to grow properly. So that is equivalent to become one with them. So that is the kind of discipline demanded. This is very high, these two are very high, very high. Most of us, of course, can fail in all the levels. I keep failing at even these things, but no one was able to achieve the level of Valalar because many fail at these disciplines, and that's why we are not able to achieve the kind of body transformation that Valalar got. So the important takeaway from here is the bottom line is treat other living beings as oneself. So that itself is a discipline. That is what is the compassionate discipline is all about. And what is new about Tamil is, most of the religions, philosophies all got stuck or, considered mukti as the highest. Mukti is basically liberation. Whereas Valalar says mukti is only a step, it's not the end. It's only a necessary condition. One has to evolve higher to integral perfection. That is what we saw as the evolution in the higher hemisphere. And that is quite unique to the Tamil, especially Valalar has done a lot of work on that. Whereas many philosophies, most of them stop short of, they consider mukti as the highest and stop there. Except that, Sri Aurobindo and Mother has done a lot of research on that. Of course, all the terminology which I'm using are borrowed from them, the supramental transformation and so on. And they have, and Sri Aurobindo also quotes that more than the Vedas, the Upanishads somewhat hints at this supramental things, but not it only gives a clue, but not in any detail. And he went beyond to do more research on that. So overall, the real purpose of this is from human being, one has to evolve into the next level, which is a supramental being through the overmind. One has to cross the overmind and then has to become the supramental being. So coming to the conclusions, we can say the natural language to awaken consciousness, how should that be? The language, should express the principles of truth and consciousness, preferably in a very simple and easy way, elegant way, like Tamil. It should exhibit grammar which is consistent with these principles. Also serve as a map for human evolution. So again, then comes the practical part. Speaking the language is surely not sufficient. Need to practice the 4 principles of compassionate discipline if one wants to see any results. Most fail at the higher levels of discipline, which I mentioned before, but that is not a reason for not trying. We can always try. The evolutionary goal is clear. The human being is not the end of things. Like how human being is compared to the ape, the ancient one, so how will be the supramental being compared to the human being? That's what Sri Aurobindo says. So the real purpose is to keep evolving to achieve the integral perfection delight. That is our evolutionary goal. So I think that's it. If anybody has questions, I'll be happy to take them. Let me get back to
great presentation. I mean, most people probably have the same question. Has similar research been done for other prominent languages that have evolved over the past century?
Sorry, 1 second. Let me get back to the sharing the screen. Stop screen sharing. Okay. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, please go ahead.
May have a question. I was just curious if similar research, you have concerns. So
can you speak up a little bit? I couldn't hear you.
I mean, has a similar research been done by other scientists on Sanskrit or other Indian languages or even other foreign languages?
I'm not sure. For example, Sanskrit. Some of these contents are quite new. For example, the Tamil. Based on the significance, the involution, evolution, I have modeled that as the convolution of the im sound with the hard consonants to evolve into soft consonants. These are all new. This is under review with the journal. To my knowledge, I have not seen any paper modeling things like this. And of course, about the higher hemisphere sounds also, I have results I have not seen. Coming to the structural grammar, again, it's published in another paper. I don't think this Sanskrit script has structural grammar, to my knowledge at least, because it has to start from this agaram, the form which I showed, and then go further. And those are also quite new results, showing how these are the scripts, the letters themselves reflect the principles. Okay. To my knowledge, I don't think I have not seen these two grammars being explored.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
So I want to know whether we can use normal DSO 138 for the voice analysis.
Sorry, what is that? DS1? What is that? Sorry, I'm not aware of that. I used just MATLAB in my MacBook. All this are done with just the laptop speaker and the Audacity cropping, voice recording software, and then further analysis on in MATLAB. There's not. These are all quite offline analysis, so I don't think it requires a specialized DSP or sophisticated hardware.
No. What I'm asking is, can you use digital oscilloscope, simple kits like DSO 138?
For what?
For using a voice sensor to recognize the voice and capture the information.
Capture what information? Sorry, I'm not getting the
letter, the sound.
Oh, sound.
The
Actually, it is better done with the MATLAB software, right? Because you have more control because when you capture, just to filter them, pre-emphasize, some kind of pre-filtering and then visualizing, it's better to use the softwares than the scopes.
No, because these days DSO 138, those things are readily available. We can.
So it comes. But they are not real time because they're real time. You can see the tone, of course, when you whistle and stuff like that. But I'm not sure how much useful it will be in terms of speech analysis. These hardwares will be.
Okay.
Any other questions? One more.
I just want to share a comment. Thank you very much for the speech. I joined really late, but I heard someone telling if you learn Tamil, you learn everything. Now I realize, so learning Tamil is not easy. It's very, very difficult to know everything. So it's such a difficult language. I mean, in the sense, so much is there. One's lifetime is not enough to learn, whatever it's in Tamil.
That may be true. There is a lot of literature in Tamil. But in terms of learning the language, I feel that is the most simplest one. Because if one can learn Sanskrit, you will see, almost there are only just 15 consonants and then 12 vowels. It's very simple and then very elegant. Basic Tamil, of course, we can very easily learn. Of course, dwelling into the historical literature, that is a different thing. But as a basic thing, one can easily learn.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Normal sound, for human sound is 165 to 225 hertz frequency, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when we recorded the consonants, the frequency you are showing is different. Like, can I know the difference?
Yeah. Typically around 5 kilohertz, 6 kilohertz, they capture most of the information actually. Beyond 10K and all, it's if you see the formant frequencies, they're all well within the range of less than 6K. That holds all the key information. Right? So that's why you wouldn't see very large because beyond the third, fourth consonant, there's really not much information. Most of the information is captured in these forms. In fact, for vowels, first two formants in fact are enough to differentiate the different vowels, and the relation between them will determine the high, low, or backness, the frontness of the vowels. So for vowels, 2 are enough. For consonants, 3 or 4 are good enough. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, Dr. Rajesh from Washington University had done similar kind of research, but that is with respect to, in addition with respect to the brain frequency, like alpha, beta, delta, like.
Okay.
So how, like let us say delta, which is 5 hertz, and not talking, right?
Yeah, that would be interesting research. Yeah, I would be interested to know that also. Yeah, there is certainly, because there's when you talk a word, of course there's a lot of brain signals should reflect that. But in terms of just the basic vowels, even what patterns it would leave in terms of brain signals, that would be an interesting thing to research. Yeah, I agree, but I'm not aware of those things.
Okay, thank you. Wonderful. It's very interesting talk, and it's because most in the Indian system we had other than Tamil Nadu, there is there is no state that really accepts Tamil like as another language like Sanskrit. But this kind of information, it'll reveal like why Tamil is important. And of course, Sanskrit is a wonderful language. We cannot deny on that. But learning another language is also very important because, as you see, we get so much evidence, like how the preliminary structure of consciousness is hidden in the language, as well as our in the real evolutionary process. So it's very immense what you have spoken today, immense knowledge that is breaking many. It's a very significant research, and of course we need to document and more. This kind of thing we will be limited by funding, basically, because people really pour money into things that are unwanted. They don't know the importance of language like this. I think the government should fund this. Central government, I don't know how it's going to happen, but should significantly fund for both Sanskrit and Tamil languages to evolve. Of course, there are other Bengali and other languages, but I'm talking about. People are a little confused because they belong to different language, but in the Dravidian tradition, if you look at all these languages before 1500 years, 700 years, many languages like Malayalam, Kannada, or Telugu, they did not have a script before that. So it's very evident that there was one language that was spoken widely. But so there is. It is very important that before the Tamil was widely spoken, I think, and I don't know what happened. We don't know, but the information is important, not to separate people from saying you're a Tamilian or a Tamil kind of personality. It is needed for the whole world. I think, in terms of bringing a language, in ancient, the oldest language, to the world is everyone's responsibility. And it's not looking as a language for just communication, just communicating with people, but this language is an expression of consciousness. So I think everybody has a responsibility, whether you speak Telugu or Gujarati, it doesn't matter. But not looking from that perspective as a mother tongue. My mother tongue is very different. We have a traditional mother tongue that is very local to our region, which didn't have script before 300, 400 years. And basically we all were before that, Tamilians. But, the Tamilians are, it's not about Tamilians or anything, but it's about humanity. So human beings have evolved from one particular area, and in the beginning of evolution, it spread everywhere. So this content is very important, I think, for everybody. So what you have given today is wonderful, and we will have more of this kind of features, and we'll also bring into other concept of Sanskrit and other languages are also important. If you get a good speaker who does research on this, they can also speak about it, so we can compare and see how each one can mutually be benefited. So that's the entire idea. So all the ideas are to not separate, different languages or sectarianism, but in order to appreciate each other. Well, I have a few announcements. Before that, we are going to bring this language kind of sound based. Pranayama is also a sound based system. It involves words, it involves air movement. It's an inner sound. So we have a course on pranayama in the month of December, when the ozone layers are coming down. So it's early morning. So if you're in the west coast, it's early morning. It's very good time. Here Eastern time, it's 7:45. We start the course. The course is given by Dr. Sundar Balasubramaniam. Most of you know. And then we have a short course on pain management, which is starting on the 17th. So one more week, 10 days more. If you're interested, people can register for these courses. Pain management based on ancient Varmakalai and Varmamudira Priyogam, the acupressure, ancient acupressure. So this, if you are interested in that course, you can. It is already filling, and we want more students. We're trying to get 50 students, but you all register for this course and get benefited from that. Other than that, and we have an event coming up in Virginia. It's an event celebrating all the sage scientists, Vallalar, Thiruvalluvar, Avayar, and all different sage scientists from different places, in across India. So we are. It's an event. Everybody can participate. If we are nearby in Northeast, it's falls on the 17th and the 18th of this month. So you can join if you like, and if you're nearby. And so that's pretty much about our event. So we'll have more number of courses, more number of, as you are supporting, we can bring more number of courses, more number of speakers, and many interesting concepts that we can learn from the things that we missed in colonization. So you have to break this thing into sectarianism, look into a more broader perspective of how our ancient sage scientists who do not have a religion, these people are all came out of religion, caste, creed, even the language. So beyond language, they were speaking a language. So these languages are for every human being across the world. So thank you, Mr. Rajesh Kothandaraman Sanmarki.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Thank you all. I'll see you all next week with a speaker. I have couple of speakers we were thinking about, and it could be a Varmakalai Asan from Tamil Nadu, or there should be an Ayurvedic Asan. So we will confirm in a couple of days. Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Excuse me, I have one request. Are we getting the recording? I see the recording happening.
Right. Yeah. You will. You basically we post it in the. If you're in the WhatsApp group, we post it there. So every week we do. Yes, you can get the recordings.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.